The story begins with a disaster that has fallen upon this world. It was the greatest and harder to endure than anything humanity had ever faced before. The planet was attacked by unknown monsters, and humanity fell into greater chaos against its overwhelming existence. Monsters of all kinds, from worms to orcs and flying-eyes octopus. The newspapers show that these unknown creatures have demanded to hand over people to them for food if they want to live, but they decline their demand. The man shouts that if monsters want to use humans as food, then we must not slack off in front of these very creatures. Humanity started calling the unknown creature that appeared all of a sudden calamities. To take down the calamities, people even resorted to using nuclear weapons, but to the creatures, it was only a bonfire. They began to destroy the city as they danced. When all hope was lost and each human was waiting for the hour of their death, then there appeared 13 constellations. When people were chosen by the god and became known as saints, and each saint used the powers bestowed by the god. But there was also a 13th who was not chosen by any divine being. It was our main character, Lee Geon, Crimson Eye, who was considered the source of all calamities. At the demonic tower, all 13 constellations gather at the demonic tower, where they live. Lee Geon says, "Well then shall we go?" And then they went to clear the demon tower. The crimson-eyed demons and all the saints were engaged in combat. Then we are taken to the next scene, where the reporter asks, "What happened? Why did only 12 of you return? And where is Lee Geon?" While standing at the stage, it appears that one of the 13 is crying as he declares, "Lee Geon sacrificed himself for the good of all mankind." Well, this is all nonsense. As Lee Geon says, he really risked his life, but he didn't sacrifice himself. What really happened was Lee Geon barely defeated the Crimson Eyes due to the fact that the other 12 saints fled, leaving Lee Geon alone himself, but he was still able to defeat the demon. A dagger penetrated his chest as he was recovering from the fight and fell into abyss. Apparently, one of the saints who Lee Geon thought had run away stabbed a dagger in his back and trapped him in the worst place that he could never escape from, as he was put together with a monster. He thinks it's not good that my left arm was cut off and he can't lift his right arm. It would be much easier to die right away, but he won't just give up. Seeing the dagger lying next to him, he stuck it in his teeth and stood up saying, "Don't make me laugh. Who says I'll just go down like this? I won't die like this." And he jumped on the monster with a sword and shouted that he would die until he found the bastard who stabbed him in the back. Just wait. We are transported to a restaurant somewhere where they say, "Lee Geon, listen to me carefully, tomorrow you will die." It was said by one of the saints, Hugo. Lee Geon replied, "Well, I understand why you're worried. But don't worry, man. I'm definitely not going to die. I've killed more calamities than all the 12 constellations put together." Do you really think I might die? It all started at Demonic Tower, the place where the worst calamity that can bring death to all mankind lives. It all started on the last day of the 20th century. The powerful calamity appeared out of nowhere and cornered humanity with their overwhelming power, leaving only utter darkness and chaos in it. It was during this period that the 12 gods who called themselves sacred appeared, and they vowed to empower humanity with the power to fight back against all monsters. And they chose 12 awakened who were granted indescribable power, but something that no unexpected happened. The 13th awakened showed up without the blessing of any sacred entity. Moreover, this awakened one was so powerful, so incredible, that even the 12 saints were no match for him. And it was, of course, Lee Geon thanked him for helping them organize the attack on the demonic tower. Hugo thanks Lee Geon. Because of him, we were able to conquer the demon tower this time. Lee Geon replies that words won't be enough, and that he wants a free supply of fried chicken for 5 years to come. Hugo asked if he wasn't tired of eating only chicken, and then the women. One of the 12 said that after defeating Crimson Eye, they would have a worthy reward. Another of them also added that since this monster is considered to be the most dangerous one causing misfortune, they should demand at least $100 billion from them. Lee Geon said they should have asked for 10 years of free accommodation in a 7-star hotel somewhere in Hawaii. After all, because of the red eye, many countries are on the verge of crisis. One of the alleged saints said, "Hey Lee Geon, if you want to cooperate with us, you should set the bar higher. Don't you think you don't want to heal your disfigured body and face?" Lee Geon told them that even though they are called saints, they are really just a bunch of scum who only care about their own skin. And they also said that he should stop rushing to help everyone because a few victims will only increase their price, which will increase the reward. Lee Gang says that after defeating Red Eye, he hopes that he won't see them again. When they entered the demonic tower, they saw it with their own eyes. Just by looking at it, one can feel a terrifying pressure. Then suddenly the crimson-eyed demon started screaming that the whole earth was already shaking and the surface was disappearing from under their feet. And suddenly there was a huge shot from under it, which already threw everyone who was there. This beam pierced the roof of the tower. All 12 heroes were terrified. After the beam, a huge crater was formed in that place, in which lava boiled. The demon lord only laughed maliciously. The 12 constellations started to run away. Lee Geon was the only one thinking about how to fight the Crimson Eye. Lee Geon says to think that these scum were called saints. Well, it doesn't matter to me. The one who defeats the Crimson Eye demon will be me, he thought. And then it's narrated from Lee Geon's perspective. But in the end, I was stabbed in the back by my own comrades. I wonder how much time has passed. How are things in the outside world? Does time flow equally inside and outside the tower? I'm even too lazy to think about anything right now. I'm just here. And we see a bunch of monsters that the hero is shredding. And this place is a special trap in which hordes of monsters continuously appear. Lee Geon shouts, "Do you think that just this would be enough to kill me? Just wait, I will definitely survive this, and tear off the heads of all those who dare to betray me." It is narrated that as time passed, forward, and now 20 years have passed since that moment, we see a monster that screams in fear as it manages to get a little away, and then Lee Geon says that he is the last one left. The monster screamed and called for help, but there was no one to help. Lee Geon says, "Scream all you want," as he finished him off, saying it's finally over. Suddenly, he just fell to the ground. We are transported to the current world, and we see that only ruins remain from the buildings, and somewhere 2 boys are running, shouting to each other to run. The boy says, "I told you not to go over there." "Didn't I?" Another person told him. Who knew that everything would turn out like this? After all, they said that today would be safer than usual. They didn't even think that they would run into high-ranking monsters. One of the boys, with tears in his eyes, says that the fortune teller told him that today he would meet a monster. They are surrounded by a crowd of monsters that look like wolves, and they think that if only Lee Geon could return from the demonic tower, these monsters wouldn't even dare to show themselves here. Suddenly, a nearby tower opens up, blinding everyone around it. And then there is a huge explosion. The boys notice that someone is coming out of the tower. It was Lee Geon, who is full of strength and has apparently recovered his arm. And then he says, "Stab me in the back and leave me to rot in this hole. I won't let you get away with this." The boys are just shocked to see what he's doing, as Lee Geon just deals with monsters with his bare hands. They can't even believe their own eyes that someone can easily take down the monster. Even high-ranking awakened ones wouldn't be able to finish them off easily. They compared the monster to helpless insects. Suddenly, Lee Geon notices these guys and jumps towards them. A huge monster appeared behind Lee Geon, and as he turned around, he saw a huge dog standing there. The guys are just shocked because this is the leader of the pack. The dog began to charge with a beam released from its mouth that incinerated everything around it. The beam was so huge that it was higher than multi-story buildings. The guys were surprised that they were still alive at all, and Lee Geon just stood there, and there weren't any scratches left on him. They couldn't believe that he protected them with his body. Just like that. Lee Geon jumped on the dog, shouted, "Sit down," and hit it so hard that the monster was immediately defeated. By now, he is probably done with everything. And he says, "You 2 guys, go buy me some food." He says, in an ominous voice, that they're just terrified. Realizing the strangeness of the situation, he asks to buy more clothes. Then we are transported to a small store, where the guys stare at the receipt in utter horror. After all, he ate $10,000 worth of food alone. Lee Geon said they didn't have much money, so he held back a bit. They asked, "Is that a little bit?" Lee Geon said, "You said to yourself that you would treat me to anything, since it is the price of your lives." And he ordered another batch of noodles. "Please." One of them asked if he was a disciple or a captain, and what he was doing outside the tower anyway. Lee Geon smiled and said that he was inside the tower, and then just walked out of it. "By the way, who are they, because they don't look like ordinary citizens? And why can I sense magic power from you?" Then one of them explained that this youngster is a disciple, having received the blessing of a god. Lee Geon replied that gods ain't shit, and why would he serve those bitches? Suddenly he saw his reflection in the spoon. He was just in shock, and he started shouting that he needed a mirror, and they showed him where it was. Then he took off his t-shirt and started looking at his wounds and scars. His body was completely healed. Remembering who he was with what wounds and scars, and he thought my old wounds were so bad that they were simply impossible to heal. And his left arm is also healed. And then he sees some kind of pattern on his palm when suddenly a snake begins to emerge from it. He was in pain, and he began to squeeze his hand. A message popped up saying, "You have experienced death. You have completed an impossible achievement. All your skills are inherited by the new body. All achievements from the tower are converted to experience points, and all unique skills and traits formerly possessed by him will be transferred and evolve." Then Lee Geon was suddenly transferred to some location. It was an empty space in which there was a huge green snake that was standing in front of him. He touched the snake's nose, and suddenly there was a huge blinding flash. Then he went back to the guys, who were scared, and asked if he was okay. Lee Geon asked if he had seen a huge snake, gesturing that it was indeed too huge. They said that they didn't see any snakes. He just saw Lee Geon undressed and ran to the mirror, and then suddenly began to scream and grabbed his wrist. Lee Geon realized that other people didn't see it, and he was back in space. "You have become the master of Ophiuchus." Small screens fly around him, on which it is written what skills he has. One of the skills is super regeneration, which repairs a crippled body. It says that his body was rebuilt from scratch for this. He will suffer a small punishment. But the punishment itself was that his physical strength was reduced by 50%, and there are 1,300 hours left until the end of this punishment. Then he wondered if his body had changed because of this skill. He had never heard of other saints seeing something like this before, and he couldn't sense the energy of the divine God. Anyway, he is happy with this scenario after all. His body is completely restored. All he had to do now was hunt down the traitors who had left him and slaughter the person who stabbed him in the back. Just thinking about it makes his body flutter. The guys are shocked that he started looking so intimidating. We are transported to the tower, which was sealed off by the police after the tower, which was considered indestructible, suddenly collapsed. The whole world will go wild over this. After all, the place has a special connection to the hero Lee Geon. The man thinks, can this be the work of his followers, or the disciples who disliked him? They noticed that the monster that even a high-ranking saint couldn't handle, who else could challenge this monster and destroy the tower? They began to wonder if Lee Geon really had survived and returned to the world alive. They say they can't be sure, so they just have to wait and see. We are transferred to an office somewhere where the camera is aimed at the podium, and there is a large crowd of people asking for comments about the collapse of the demon tower. Is there a chance that Lee Geon survived? Saints was standing at the podium, and he said that there were no comments on this issue. The entire crowd was surprised that he didn't make any comments. Then he got in the car and broke his glasses in anger, repeating over and over how many times he had already heard the name Lee Geon. And thinking of it, it couldn't be that he survived for 20 years in that tower. That was impossible because there were thousands of monsters there, and they were all black-ranked. It was a miracle that they had managed to escape by stealing red eyes. He thinks he couldn't have survived there after all. His body was on edge due to that big guy's deadly attacks, and he hasn't received any blessings from God. But if he really survived and came back, then it's all over. And then we're going back to Lee Geon, holding the phone, and saying, "How about I crush this guy first?" We are transferred to an airport, where a man getting off the plane is greeted with the words to think that I would have the chance to meet one of the 12 saints. This is an honor for me. It was Hugo. He asked where the Prime Minister was, and he was told that he was already waiting for his office and that his car was already ready. Then he said, "Let's go." These two employees are shocked. They think that he is very dignified, and this is what a truly chosen person looks like. Sitting in the car, he hears his phone ringing from calls from an unknown number, but he didn't pick up the phone, thinking they were just annoying reporters. He can't believe those stories about Lee Geon's return have become so popular, which made him very angry after all 20 years had passed. We are shown a flashback in his memories of how he told Lee Geon that he was going to die tomorrow, but he only asked, does he have such a low opinion of him? Then, when they started attacking the demonic tower at Lee Geon's request, he went outside and held off the incoming hordes of monsters. He wanted to believe that his prophecy was wrong and that Lee Geon would live, but when he saw them, he asked why Lee Geon wasn't with them. The saints who went in with him abandoned him and returned with the head of the red-eyed demon. This event soon became known to the whole world. The saints, including myself, were recognized as heroes and gained even more influence. Hugo thinks about how he was unable to believe that Lee Geon was dead. He kept asking them to start looking for him, but he was told enough was enough. Then it's all over. The cancer saint said that he was well aware of the number of monsters coming from that tower. There's no way that Lee Geon could have survived, but if he's so worried about him, he can go and start looking for him alone. No one is holding him back, but it seems to him that then there will be one less saint, and there will be 11 of them. Then the flashback is cut. And we see Hugo believe that no matter how strong Lee Geon is, it's impossible and it's too late now. Then the Prime Minister suddenly called him on the phone and asked if he could talk. He said yes. And then the minister said that he probably already heard that it looked like the demonic tower was destroyed. Hugo told the same story again. I'm sorry, Prime Minister, but if you were going to ask me to start looking for Lee Geon, then I have to refuse. After all, Lee Geon had died that day in the Demon Tower. The Demon Tower incident was probably caused by Lee Geon followers. And if you intended to take advantage of this for election votes, the minister interrupted him and said that this was not the case because, according to news that he received from the Korean government, it is reliable. Most recently, a call line just rang moments ago. Hugo asked, "What rang?" The minister said Lee Geon's exclusive call line rang. Hugo was very surprised and asked if it was real. He asked to stop the car. Perhaps the unknown number that tried to call him was Lee Geon. Looking at the phone screen, there were 30 missed calls. He decides to listen to the message that Lee Geon left. He was saying with a sinister voice, "Yotaiksu, I'll find you and kill you. Good luck." It sounded so ominous that it scared the hell out of him. But he recognized this manner of speech. It's really Lee Geon. Then he immediately asked the driver to turn the car around. They were going to the airport urgently. He asked that he also had a job in the UK, to which Hugo shouted that he didn't care. He needed to get to the airport as soon as possible. Then we are taken back to Lee Geon. He sits with his phone in his hands and says, "You've grown up, Hugo, and you even dare to ignore my calls." The guy asked who he had called so many times. Lee Geon waved it off, saying, "You will see," and then he asked, "They call this thing in his hands a smartphone, don't they?" He said he liked it very much. Lee Geon said that he entered the tower in 2005, but at the moment, it is already 2025. They were surprised that it was his first time using a smartphone and said that with it, you can connect to the internet and watch the news. Then Lee Geon asked, can he watch the news about himself? They turned on the news about him and said that this is now the hottest topic for discussion. There was an awful lot of news about him, which made him immerse himself in it. Suddenly, he saw comments from haters who called him worthless. This made Lee Geon angry. He clutched the phone tightly in his hand. The guy was getting worried about his phone. Lee Geon says, "Who caught the crimson eye? Those All they had done was run away as soon as they met the monster." And Lee Geon said, "Let's hold my anger. This is nothing." Then came the news about Lee Geon's death, and he remembered that he decided to give all his fortune to orphanages and educational institutions in case of his death, and he hopes that all the money will reach them. Then he saw the article that Lee Geon gave all his possessions, including the relics, to the 12 saints to help save humanity. The phone is smashed into pieces in his anger, and Lee Geon says, "I've decided that I'm going to kill all of them and rip their bodies apart piece by piece." The guy said goodbye to his phone. Lee Geon just sit down and think about what he should do. He intends to announce every one of his returns, but now his appearance is very different from what it was 20 years ago. And even if he went outside and started shouting that he was Lee Geon, no one would believe him, so he figured he should stay quiet and take care of those bastards one by one. Suddenly, a red fog appeared around them. Lee Geon hears a warning that he is being watched. Lee Geon felt this aura and went outside. When he came out, he saw huge flying clouds in the shape of animals. And he says, "Are they underlings of Eris?" Lee Geon gets angry and shouts, "Do you dare act like this? When you go kissing the asses of the divine gods." Lee Geon suddenly heard a person's conversation. Lee Geon, everyone just talks about him so damn loudly. I mean, he is all over the news. I wonder why they give him so much attention. He is a lost case anyway, and a woman agrees with him. Then the guys noticed the saint's badge on his clothes, and they began to ask Lee Geon to leave them because if they provoked them, they would be in trouble. But Lee Geon stood right in front of them. The person wanted to appear cool and asked what he was looking at with a cigarette in his mouth. He blew smoke into Lee Geon's face and asked him if he had any problems. This made Lee Geon angry. The guy said that if he is angry, "Come hit me." His girlfriend told him not to scare him because he seemed very scared. The guy called him a weakling and added that losers like those are the ones who like Lee Geon. The guy keeps on saying stuff like, "Why do they like the weakest saint so much? Could the fact that he is a saint be a lie?" The boy comes to calm Lee Geon down by saying those guys are from Gemini. They are over A-ranked, and Lee Geon suddenly shouts at their backs, "Hey, you roaches." They turned around and said, "Roaches? Did you just call us roaches?" Lee Geon added, "Yeah, the two of you are a couple of cockroaches." The guy came close to Lee Geon and asked him to say that shit again. The guy started blabbering. Lee Geon took a finger and flicked that guy so hard that he flew to another building. Everyone was in shock, and Lee Geon stood there with a smile on his face and said, "You think I wouldn't notice what you're doing behind me?" He flicked his fingers again and gave her a flick that sent her flying into the next building too, and then he called them weaklings. The guys said, "How could you use your ability in the middle of the street?" Lee Geon replied. "What are you talking about? They would have been dead if I had used my abilities." They are shocked that he knocked out two A-rankers with just his finger. Lee Geon approached the man and saw a small pendant around his neck, tearing it off. He said, "So that's what I felt when I hit him. It's a relic, isn't it? But why do these bastards have divine artifacts? Only saints should have them." Right. The kid asked if he really didn't know anything at all, and he began the story a few decades ago. Humanity was almost wiped off the face of the earth, but thanks to the divine gods, they chose constellations. Humans managed to survive the calamity, but only 12 people were able to protect the entire world. Therefore, the saints began to gather followers, calling themselves branches. Those who were given a piece of the power of the saints became known as divine cadres. The people who awakened by being granted power by the saints are called disciples. They are ranked according to their level of strength. The selected disciple is then given gifts from the divine gods. Lee Geon says, "So that happened during the 20 years I was away." Suddenly, the boy called him and told him to look there, and there were avatars looking at him. Avatars of wealth and greed that are associated with the Aries enjoy the current situation. They demand that Lee Geon quickly deal with the man and woman who attacked him. Avatars crave bloodshed for the massacre of them. They promise him a worthy reward. The guys are terrified because he caught the attention of household gods. They're like the shadows of the divine gods. Opposing them is the same as opposing the divine gods. The guy says to hurry and do as they want. Lee Geon wonders why Yangoons were in a place like this. This made him angry because they intended to fill their bellies like that pig. And Lee Geon raised his leg and said he hadn't changed at all, slamming his leg on the ground. The shockwave destroys the household god, and the huge red cloud in the sky vanishes. Lee Geon says, "How dare you stand up to me?" The guys are surprised because the household god retreated and the barrier disappeared. And they realize that Lee Geon is definitely not an ordinary person. Lee Geon called the boy Jimin, and the boy replied by saying yes. Lee Geon asked about this thug. "And here you said they were a disciple of Gemini." Jimin replies, "Yes. They are the divine cadre that has influence in this country." Lee Geon asks if they all have tons of money. Lee Geon smiles and says everything he's wearing is branded clothing. Right. After that, Lee Geon says looting times are the best. We are transported to a small, multi-story building, and everyone says that they finally came. Jimin said that he lives in that apartment on the second floor that has no light on, pointing to his friends. Said his door was next door. At the same time, they also thanked Lee Geon for saving them and even walking them home. They were expecting something, but Lee Geon yawned and asked if they weren't going in. "I'm sleepy." They were shocked that he was going to sleep with them. Jimin says, "Are you thinking of mooching off of me in my house?" The next thing we know is that Lee Geon's hair is being cut off and he's undressing. Then he stands in front of the mirror. Jimin says that a short haircut really suits him, and now he looks even cooler than before. This made Lee Geon very happy because, in the past, baldness was a side effect of using his abilities, and he treasured every single hair. Even a normal wind could blow his hair away, when suddenly he noticed a calamity in his apartment, and he crushed it in his fist with lightning speed. Jimin is shocked because he caught it with one hand. Even experts can't do that. Lee Geon says it's not just one calamity. Why do they keep coming to me? Jimin suggested that maybe they were attracted to his scent. Then Lee Geon replied, "Bullshit. Something in this house is attracting them." Lee Geon noticed the relics and said, "It's because you have all these evil artifacts here. That's why calamities are coming here." Jimin says evil artifacts. "I received these items directly from the Gemini saint. Even though they aren't mine, they have been blessed by the saint." Immediately, Lee Geon broke the figurine in Jimin's hands. Jimin shouted, "Ah!" Lee Geon says that this mask is a divine artifact that monitors its buyer. The music box collects all his personal information, and the watch generally attracts the attention of monsters. Lee Geon says that those bastards not only steal my money, they're selling things like evil artifacts to people and feeding off others. The thought of it makes Lee Geon angry. He says, "Just throw them all away!" Then we see someone standing outside their door, and he enters the apartment. Lee Geon asks, "Who is he?" Jimin greeted him, "Sung-jae?" Lee Geon words made him very angry, and the red-haired guy says, "Me? I am the owner of this house." Lee Geon says, "Ah!" Then we are transported to the residence of Yang Wei, where the Saint Yang is being informed that the household gods that were in Korea have disappeared. The staff said that there was a big uproar in Korea about it. The saint wondered who on earth would do something like that. The household gods are the subordinates of the divine gods. No awakened would dare to chase them out. Then the Yang asked to contact all the other saints and ask if they had anything to do with this. The servant replied that Sagittarius had not been in touch for a long time. Yang replied, "Hugo, don't bother him. He's probably in England as a mercenary right now." The servant says we've been told that shortly after touching down in England, he left England straight away. Yang asked where he was going. The servant replied that the destination was South Korea. Then Yang wondered, after all, Hugo was the best friend of Lee Geon. Could his actions be related to the rumors of Lee Geon's return? Yang thought, did he really come back alive? This made Yang so angry that he threw the floor lamp at his servants and shouted that it was impossible. Do a proper investigation on this. And what about other situations? The staff said that an unconscious Gemini was found to have fainted at the spot. He was left with only his underwear and was lying naked on the streets. Based on witnesses, he quarreled with a handsome man. Yang says handsome. Then it's not Lee Geon then. In any case, the recent situation isn't good. There are rumors that Lee Geon is back. The household god has disappeared for unknown reasons. And we also failed to subjugate the Spider Queen. If this goes on, my position will be threatened. So Yang will ask the servant to prepare his private jet. The servant asks, "Are you going there yourself?" Yang replied, "Yeah, I need to find out what exactly is happening in Korea with my own eyes." Then we are transported to a hospital in Korea, where the thug is laying in bed, and his grandfather says, "Who on earth dared to turn my grandson into this? Hey you," and pointing his finger at the person in the white suit. The person in the white suit says, "Don't worry about what happened this time around. That is why the Gemini Divine Cadre dispatched me." Chairman, the white suit guy was an S-rank disciple of Gemini named Min Sung-hoon, Permafrost.